Hi, welcome to Two Non-Doctors. I'm Liz Mealy.
I'm Maria Shahada.
It is so funny that I use this as a mirror where you're just like, are you ready? And I'm like, no, I'm staring at my face, Maria.
You know, you're like brushing your teeth. I'm like, can we start? I'm running out of
This
sunlight.
is like the first time I'm looking at my face. You'd be proud of me. I've been very good. I put on SPF every day, even though I don't leave the house like almost ever. But I'm trying to build up the habit now so that when I do leave the house, it's like not a thing I think about. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So if I do it every day when I wake up, then when I start to wake up and leave the house, I don't have to start a new habit. It's there. It's set. It's set. I don't even think.
Right.
But it makes me feel shiny. I feel shiny.
The shiny looks good. Your
Thank you.
skin looks good. It's the face you made.
Yeah,
Squishing it together that was disastrous.
I'm not joking, dude. My skin looks the best it's ever looked. Like, you know me, I'm a crazy person. When I decide to do something, I'm all in and I'm like researching, I'm like reading books, I'm like watching 17 YouTube videos. So like, I don't know if it's just the fact that we have time, because you know us, we normally come home anywhere from like midnight to 2 a.m. You're lucky if we take our makeup off. And now I start my skincare regimen at like 8 o'clock at night, to the point where like I'm like, you know me, I don't have very good service in my bathroom. So if somebody tries to call me, I'm like, I'm in the middle of my skincare regimen. Like, I don't have time for, I know it's 8 o'clock, but like, this is a 2 hour process for this beauty. And then this shit's not even HD. Like, I don't even know why I'm trying, but I look amazing. I feel amazing.
You do. You look great.
Thank you so much.
You know
No
what I love
makeup.
about you, Liz, and it's gonna sound like a slam, but I do love it.
I'm ready.
Is like when I text you and I go, "Can we talk? I have a problem." And you go, yeah, sure. And you're so generous with your time. You give up everything. You're there for me. But it is about a 10-minute like Mark Maron pre-interview rant from you about whatever it is, skincare, what you had for lunch, pasta, whatever, before I can get into
You're literally like being stabbed on the street. This is like a 911 call. And I'm like, let me go first. I corner my roommates. Okay, so I think I could never work in an office. So I've always heard from people, and I've never really worked that long in an office. I've done like temp stuff, but people have always talked about that weird thing where like you pass by somebody, you say hi in the morning. Then you pass by somebody again. Are you supposed to say hi again? What's the protocol? Do you just look at your papers? And like my poor roommates, this is why I know I would have been fired from a real job. Because like we'll wake up, I'll say hi. I'm already ranting. It's 10 a.m. I'm already ranting. What has happened that I'm already ranting? But I'm already ranting. Then they go to their room. Then we see each other maybe around lunch, ranting again. I'm self-aware enough to know when somebody has stuff to do. I mean, they're looking at their phone, they're backing into their room, and I see it, but I still am like, and I'll acknowledge it. I'll be like, I know you're busy, but like just 10 more minutes. Like I'm such a psychopath. But I see what I'm doing, and clearly, you know, if the house is on fire, I'll be running and ranting. But
Yes.
it's pretty hard to turn off. What a
Yeah.
crazy man at all times. But you're not wrong. I just noticed that we keep forgetting to ask people to rate and review us on iTunes. We've like completely dropped it from our announcements.
We haven't. Oh, we have.
So
Okay.
guys, I feel like more and more people don't listen to stuff on iTunes, but it doesn't matter. It helps us. Rate and review on iTunes.
Get all the losers that are still listening to iTunes and calling it iTunes because it's Apple Podcasts now, but never mind, Liz. And
I can't update. I
Get
can't
all those
update my
losers.
emotions, let alone my apps. Are you
help
kidding
them
me?
be in the know. I still call it Skyping. I'm like, oh, I have to Skype with so-and-so later. And then I have to catch myself and be like, because there's no like zooming verb. I guess it's like zooming, but it doesn't sound as right.
Also,
Skyping is
how
just
is it that Skype had like 15 years on Zoom? How'd they miss the ball on this? Like, I was like Skyping my friend in college. She was in Africa, and it was this type scenario. How are they not the forefront? I feel bad for them.
I don't know what's happened. I don't know. It's like
anyway.
The mob owns
However you listen to this, we're grateful. But if you want to take the time to rate and review us on iTunes, it makes a difference. It makes our day.
Join us on the socials, y'all. We're on all of them, except for Snapchat. And we're not like Two Non-Doctors isn't on TikTok, but like each of our individual accounts is on TikTok. My personal TikTok is embarrassing.
Working on it.
But I'm not though. That's the thing. I I hate TikTok. But anyway, this isn't about TikTok. This is about two non-doctors on Twitter and Facebook, and two non-DRS on Instagram, two non-doctors on YouTube. Subscribe to us, leave comments, say hello.
And thanks to everybody that is our Patreons. We appreciate you. We have tons of fun bonuses, extended interviews, bonus episodes. We'll have a new bonus episode for January. Stickers. You can be a Google guest. We have tons of stuff. But check out our Patreon, patreon.com/two non-doctors.
When are you going to learn it? Every week you go / I don't know.
Because I just naturally say / and then people yell at me and I'm like, but you knew what I was talking about. So why the fuck are you yelling at me? And then I try to correct it, but I don't know if I've ever said / in my life.
I don't think I say front or / It's like
Slash?
two non-doctors. I think it's just / but you know, like now that I'm thinking too hard about it, I can't think about it at all, or I can't figure out what I said, but whatever. But everyone knows what we're talking about.
They better. Hey, you slept the whole time and now you're being an asshole. Hold on. Sorry. As soon as you were like, I sent the link, and I was like, she like woke up. Like, being a mom is so hard.
I know, it's super difficult. It's I'm at Johnny's again. If you all remember from lockdown 1, this is where I podcasted from. We didn't start doing video until like halfway into that lockdown, but
oh yeah, now we have to care about lighting and our eyebrows. And
I don't have any lighting. I don't have any fancy nothing. He has a nice microphone. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but my flatmate has COVID, so I can't go home.
What did you pack that seemed unimportant, but you had to pack with you?
That seemed unimportant?
Yeah. Like,
what do you mean?
Because you're gonna be gone for what, 2 weeks?
Well, that's the thing is like I came home when she was like waiting on test results. So I grabbed a couple of things, like assuming maybe she'd be fine and I could just come home. But now that she's not fine, I don't know. I'm just gonna wear the same thing every day. This sweatshirt's pretty comfortable. So it's like,
also, we're wearing the same thing every day anyway.
Fuck off. I wear different black shirts every day, but they're all black.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't like not being able to go home. It's like I'm over here 5 nights a week anyway, but I don't like not having the option of going home. Yeah,
of course. Also, like, I think that's what I've always didn't like about traveling is that you have, it's almost like when somebody asks you what you like, you go, hey, do you want to get dinner on Thursday? And they're like, yeah, what do you want to get? And you're like, I don't know what I want on Thursday. Like, you're gonna ask me to just be committed to Thai food on Thursday? What if I don't want Thai food on Thursday?
Then we change it on Thursday. But I love that. I'm like, let's get Peruvian.
And then you think about Peruvian for the whole week. Yeah. But it's the same thing you pack for a trip. And, you know, you look at the weather, you're like, okay, short sleeves. I can, you know, I'll wear my sneakers, whatever. But then that day comes and you're like, I don't want to wear this. And you have no other option because you're fucking in Florida doing gigs. Like, yeah. It's about 2 days and I hate all my choices.
100%. I brought a turtleneck sweater. I hate turtlenecks. Why did I bring that?
Why do you even own that? Is it 1994?
I like the sleeves. They flare a bit.
There's some beautiful turtleneck shirts that like the turtleneck is awful, but everything else is great. And you convince yourself that you're going to be okay with it. And you never are.
Yeah. Turtleneck, like crop top. It's like all the material that was supposed to cover your stomach goes on your neck.
You're like, your ears are covered now.
I'm just waiting for my COVID test, you know, took one. And that's a shit. I must have given you COVID somehow. Over the
I learned to mute myself. Aren't you proud of me?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm like a professional now. It only took like a year.
It's weirdly unsatisfying not hearing the sneeze. I didn't think I'd ever, but I was like, can't hear it. I could see it.
Nothing out of this.
Yeah.
When will you know about your COVID test?
It's supposed to be today or tomorrow. So.
But you don't have any symptoms, right?
No, but just my sniffling for a month. It's not a symptom of COVID, but what is it? But yeah.
It'd be so funny. You get your test results and they're like, you don't have COVID, but you do have blah, blah, blah. And you're like, thank you.
Yeah, I would love that if that happened, but somebody tell me what's going on. All right. So what are we getting into?
Fan mail.
Okay.
All right. This is from Stephanie and it's about our Dream Team episode. I thought your episode this week was really interesting. I've watched all your episodes and I have found them to be funny, interesting, informative, and comforting at times. What, Stephanie? Why are you so cute? I can relate to so many of the things you've talked about. I have anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia for about 15 years. Listening to you makes me feel less alone in the world. Like, oh, there's someone else who feels and thinks the same way I do. I'm about your age, Liz. I've always had horrible nightmares attributed to the fact that I had a horrible childhood. I know my chronic insomnia is because I subconsciously do not want to go to sleep because I do not want to have nightmares. I take lots of meds. It's gotten to the point that nothing really works. If I don't take anything, sleeping pills, tranquilizers, etc., I will lay in bed at night and not sleep at all. I agree with you guys about the stress of being a kid. When I was a kid, all I wanted was to grow up and leave. My childhood felt like it was 50 years. I moved out when I was 17. It was the best day of my life. I feel like as soon as my life got good when I was 21, time started to go so quickly. And it feels like every year goes by faster and faster the older I get, except maybe this year. We all want 2020 to be over. It's so interesting. Like, well, one of the things, thank you for listening. It's funny hearing other people tell people that they relate to us, saying that makes them feel less alone, then makes me feel less alone. Like, it's like all like, I was like, okay. It's like there's a weird back and forth of comfort where like I put it out there, they go, oh, I also go with that. And now I feel less alone. And then they told me and I'm like, oh, I feel less alone. Like nobody else wants to go to bed. This is great. Because there is something to me that feels embarrassing about, I'm not afraid of the dark, but I am like afraid of my mind when I close my eyes, clearly. And I think I take everything on as I did something. And I feel like it makes me feel better knowing that like I didn't fuck up and that other people, because of their childhoods or something that happened to them, are still struggling as an adult to kind of fix their brain and work through it. And it's just, those emails help. Like the same way that listening to us helps you, those emails help us back, because I read that and I was like, that makes me feel nice.
Yeah, anytime anyone like writes in about misophonia, I'm like, yay. Not that they have it, but it's so nice.
Yeah. You have like a chart in your room. You're like, we got another one.
My army is being built one by one.
It's interesting what she said about her childhood feeling like it went on forever. I already was functioning as an adult, as we've talked about. Like I was very much like an adult child and I had so much responsibility. And I remember going to college and just having to do my own laundry was like, I was like, this is so quick. Like I just have to do my own laundry. This is amazing. And me being an adult that takes care of myself is so much less responsibility than what I had as a kid, that I think a lot of the choices I make as an adult is fighting my childhood. And of course school was torture to me and blah, blah, blah. But it does feel like every year gets faster and faster and I get happier and happier. Like I can express myself. I enjoy my friends. I like what I do. Even 2020, it's been a horrible year, but I can sit back and go, I have a great support system. I have the wherewithal and intelligence to figure out how to make money. I'm a scrounger. I'm a thinker, whatever. I have a great community, and this is temporary. And I've always said, if this happened to me when I was 20, I'd be a mess. And I have so much empathy for kids and young adults and people trying to start their lives and maybe, their dreams and careers, as opposed to, we are maybe not as established as somebody that might be like an architect that has a firm that does what they do, but like I'm so much mentally healthier to handle this year. And I don't know what I would have done if I was 20 and this happened.
I must have mentioned that with like our childhoods, we didn't like our childhoods. Like I was bored. You're just like, when am I gonna be old enough to be independent? And like people always want to go back to their childhoods. And I'm like, no interest.
Even if I could maintain feeling how I feel right now and put it in like 14-year-old Liz or even 10-year-old Liz, I wouldn't choose it. The lack of control, the lack of power, the lack of autonomy, the lack of having your own schedule, like it's miserable to me.
I used to fantasize about like taking a VW bus and driving across country to San Francisco. You're 16, 17 years old and you're like, I want to do that. She left at 17 and never looked back, and like, that's commendable, but like, I only dreamed of that.
Yeah. You went off to college.
I waited till I was in my 30s. Yeah, it was an hour and a half away. No, but I mean, I did end up traveling.
You're like, I feel the same way. I went New Jersey to New York. So people are like, "Whoa, you went to the big city." I was like, "Yeah, I went every day. It was right there." No, it is. And I think bad childhoods help you grow quicker, but then I think you have to deal with the repercussions longer, which Stephanie kind of talked about with her subconscious and her nightmares and stuff. So it's like, while she might be very independent and, you know, on the outside probably have her shit together, it does have a residual effect that you're constantly trying to fix, kind of when you're alone with your thoughts, which
now we don't ever have to be.
Yeah.
You guys can sit and listen to our thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you for writing in, Stephanie. I actually think you'll really like this episode too, because it kind of, it all comes together. You want to get into Googles?
Yes, I do. Just one second. Let's do Googles.
Yeah. I love how you like pop up. Googling. We've become very Muppets as we've done this longer and longer, especially
I've always been a Muppet. I like ask anybody from high school. I've always been
no, you've always been a Muppet, but I think we've really started to utilize our little boxes. We're like,
yeah. We just watched Muppets Take Manhattan, and it was a series of scenes. It was like it was trying to tell a story, and then they would just like switch to something else, and they'd be like, here's a song for you, here's a song for you, la da 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 da, and then it would go back to the story, and we're just like, you'd have to be high or a child to enjoy that.
First of all, great impersonation. That was beautiful. So impressed. Also, I'm pretty sure all kids' movies are literally high people and children. They're like, children are going to watch this, but we need to make extra money. So let's put some psychedelic-y things in there. Do you want to go first for Googles?
Yeah, I could go first. Here's the thing is I went through 3.
You went through a series of 3 Googles, did you?
I started with one Google, and then it led me to another possible Google, which led me to another possible Google. So
you're in a Inception Google.
Yeah, but one was called Inception Google. Didn't see it, but I think I know what you're talking about. One was about like taking things personally, being too sensitive to that, and I forget what it's called. I need to find out what it was called. Hold on. Right now, you think Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria. Have you ever heard of it?
I've never heard of that.
So I was talking to my friend, and she said that she experiences this, but it's characterized by extreme emotional sensitivity to being criticized or rejected, whether real or perceived. And I was like, oh. Go on. So sorry, these articles are always like, nobody likes rejection. It's like,
I hate that. I skipped the first page. I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah. So they think it's like related to ADD and or autism.
That I have seen.
But because of a parental relationship, some people have lower self-esteem and intense fear of rejection and abandonment of their own relationships. Other situations that cause sensitivity are like being criticized or teased or bullied. I must have skipped too much.
And that's why you're going to die soon. And you're like, what?
Yeah, I know. But it's just like whenever anyone says a perceived insult, it's taken to the extreme degree. Like it's like they may not have meant. I know a couple of people like this where it's just like you say something and they go, what are you saying about me? And you're just like, I wasn't about you at all, you know?
Well, what's interesting is, so Adrienne Appalucci, good friend of ours, she came out with an album and she got listed. Like they were just like top, you know, it just came out and they were like top 11 albums of 2020. And she texted me, she goes, I'm so upset about my review. Like all the other reviews are like, this is the best album, you need to listen. And hers was like, this is offensive. And I was like, and she was really upset. She's like, I might be PMSing. And I was like, okay, let me read it. I read it. It was a great review. Like it genuinely, like I had one line, and she's a very dark comic. So I even let my fans know, like, it's not for the faint of heart. But she's a brilliant writer and a brilliant comic, but she's really dark. And so it was truly like the way, like it's such a good review, but it did have a little caveat, which even I do when I pitch Adrienne, that was like, you know, it can be perceived as offensive, not for the faint of heart, whatever. And I had to go back and I had to be like her like inner, I was like, I promise I would not lie to you. It's a really good review. I think you're just in not the best headspace. But we have had to do that for each other, because I remember when I was living with Carmen, I would get an email and I'd be like, fuck this guy, this fucking asshole. And I'd be so mad. And I was like, read it. And she'd read it. She'd be like, I'm not trying to dismiss your feelings, but I don't know why you're upset. And I'm like, really? And she would I've always said I've had piss color glasses. Like I have this messed up filter. And I've gotten better, but I do still struggle with it.
I think a lot of people like I just called you going problem, 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 problem. Am I crazy? Or is this how I'm perceiving it? And and you were really helpful, like trying to like shine a realistic light on it. Sometimes I think my friends will like discount I remember I had an agent and I could have sworn I was being blown off by I was like, I feel like my agent's pulling away, and it felt like a relationship and they were just had like lost interest. And I talked to a friend and she was like, no, that's crazy. Just call them and talk to them and find out what's going on and like, say this is what you're working on, ask them which is good advice. So I did, and I felt a little better, but then he ended up dropping me like a couple weeks later.
And you're like, I knew I was right.
Not angrily, but yeah, just like, I'm sorry. Just like, I feel like you could do better with someone else is how we put it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've got such rejection sensory disorder or something that I'm like, I had a therapist once say that she liked my purse. And I was like, what's wrong with my outfit? Like,
that is the most perfect example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Compliment, there somehow is a perceived insult.
Yeah. But sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. And you'll never know. So there's that.
But what I think is difficult for people that don't understand what we're talking about is that we are incredibly sensitive and observant, so that you go, I think these people are pulling away. And sometimes it's this shit colored glasses. Sometimes it's this broken filter, but sometimes it's you picking up on something that you can't, whether it's reading between the lines, or clearly if you're talking to somebody in person, it's this thing that you're only given 40% of, but we're so sensitive and perceptive that we can see it more than most people can see it. And we look crazy. And that's what's hard is it's like, we're both broken and we have this superpower, and you're like, that's the problem. You can't figure out which one is which. So when you're a teenager, it's all over here. And then I think as you get older, you start to be able to differentiate a little bit. Or like what I still do is I go to you, I go to Carmen, I go to Adrian, and I go, am I being crazy, or is this perceptive? Yeah. And of course, somebody that's not there can't have all the answers. Same thing with like the agent thing. But it's tricky because I think it does have some value. Like a good example is, I remember this so clearly. I was talking with Carmen when we lived together, and I said something, and I saw her eyes. I saw it in her eyes. She pulled away. I just saw it.
Yeah.
And so I kept talking because you know me, I'm a talker. And then finally I go, did I say something that hurt your feelings? And she looks at me, and you could tell this was like maybe a year into us living together. And you could tell she was doing like the dialogue of, should I be honest? Should I? And she goes, actually, you said this and it kind of hurt my feelings, but I knew that you didn't mean to hurt my feelings. So I was trying to do the work to let it go. And I was struggling with it. And so now I know it was a thing that she was insecure about. And clearly I am more conscious and thoughtful about it. But it was this like moment of like two sensitive people communicating. Like I was like, I think I hurt her feelings, and I'm scared to acknowledge it, and she might yell at me. And she's like, I'm scared to tell her that I'm sensitive and this actually hurt my feelings. And I think it was one of the turning points in our friendship, is like that, me being more honest and brave and being open about when I notice stuff, and then another person being open about sensitivity. And then reverse, when I'm sensitive, not waiting for somebody to notice to be like, hey, can we just stop for a second? Like, I know you didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but you did. So it's really hard, and and you feel kind of crazy. And I think you can only be open in certain situations, because like you said, with the agent example and the friend, when somebody dismisses you, you're like, that's not helpful. Yeah. You're like, I know you're trying to be encouraging, but I don't think I'm not noticing something.
Yeah. But I mean, like, people can't know everything, but it's just like, you sometimes just need outside people to tell you what's going on, because you're being triggered for whatever reason. They've hit something sensitive, and you're like, did they mean it like this? Or like, when Johnny and I first started dating, like, we would fight, and he would be like, it feels like, he was like, you get very defensive. He's like, it feels like you take what I'm saying. I think I'm tossing a ball, and you're going, what? Like, why are you throwing a ball at me? And he's like, I'm not accusing you of things, but you take it and you get defensive. And I get defensive immediately. I'm like, no. He's just like, ask them what kind of sandwiches you like.
Yeah. And you're like, what, you don't think I like salads?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So let me just like read this real quick and then we can move on. But resemble certain mental health conditions, which include depression, social phobia, bipolar disorder. I'm skipping that. Okay. Typical symptoms of RSD include low self-esteem. That's not like a symptom, is it? Low self-esteem. I guess it's not a physical symptom. Avoidance of social settings, fear of failure, high expectations for self, frequent emotional bursts after being hurt or rejected, feelings of hopelessness, approval-seeking behavior, anger and aggression in uncomfortable situations, and anxiety.
It relates to all of that.
Yeah. Do you feel intense anger or aggression when someone hurts your feelings?
Yeah, I hate everybody.
Yeah. Do you feel anger or rage when you've been rejected or criticized? You could just go through like
I feel like we need to have like a little check sheet and it just covers our face as we just being like, yep.
Yeah, I'm picturing like a supercut of any reviewer in Edinburgh ever. And just like how I bitched about every single one of them.
Yeah.
Do you assume that no one likes you? Yeah,
all the time.
All fucking time.
All the time.
Are you a people pleaser? I'm not, you are.
I am. Fuck you.
And do people say that you're overly sensitive? Not me so much, but yeah. So that's that.
Crying.
So that's rejection sensory disorder.
Cool. We did it.
We diagnose ourselves with something else.
I really do think at the end of this we're going to be like, and these are all my ailments.
Take it or leave it, buddy.
Yeah. What, you want all these problems? Yeah, I started to kind of hear about that from TikTok, and
my God. Yeah.
And it being connected to ADHD, which is only reinforcing more my belief that I have ADHD. Okay. Mine is, how do I have chapped lips if I haven't been outside?
Now, I read this on the Google Doc and you were pretty angry.
I thought this was going to be my best winter because I have really like sensitive skin in general. Like my skin's always dry, and like my hands always crack, and my hands are fine. But my lips, I'm like, why the fuck are my lips chapped? So what I was surprised about is that like all the articles were like, I got you. Like every single article was like, this has been happening. Okay. So first is there's like external reasons why you might have chapped lips. So I was shocked by this. Cinnamon, like a strong cinnamon gum for some reason can chap your lips, or your toothpaste.
Interesting.
Being a stronger toothpaste because of whitening or what have you. So it basically said the residue from cinnamon, mint, spices spread to your lips, which, the lining in your mouth isn't as sensitive, so it can mess up your lips. Then there's the internal stuff. So like I knew this one, lip licking. That's why like kids always have chapped lips, and they're always like, it's the enzymes. There's enzymes on your tongue or in your saliva, I believe, that break down food. And when you lick your lips, it starts breaking down your lips. And that's why when little kids are constantly licking their lips, they have like little.
I always had chapped lips as a kid. Always. Yeah, I was always
a little weird.
And they're bleeding.
Yeah, little weird lip licker. That's what they called you. So, but then the other thing, which I didn't find, but I've seen in a video before, is like, how they used to have like chapstick, the brand chapstick. They were like, they have razor blades in it or little pieces of glass that are ripping apart, and that's why you're addicted to it. That's not true. But what is true is there is some chemical in chapstick that is clearly, it'll moisturize it, but then it also starts to kind of break down and makes it more addictive because it's, your lip starts to feel uncomfortable or chapped, and it's addictive. So what I've noticed, what I think is happening, I don't know if it's true. I bought this like Vaseline, like lip thing or whatever, when I was home because I couldn't find my chapstick, but I've used Burt's Bees pomegranate chapstick for like 10 years. And it's very like, it's in my bag. I use it like once a week, not a big deal. And then I started using this when I was home because I forgot it, and my lips have been more chapped. So
okay, interesting.
Vaseline, I'm sorry not to trust you. And I got it because it said gold dust, and I was like, ooh, maybe it's gonna be shimmery.
It's not shimmery, but it does match your fingernails, which is why I really think you got it.
Probably. There's some girl shopping in there.
You're the type of person when you brush your teeth, you get like toothpaste like all around your mouth and shit.
Not all around my mouth. I'm apparently a dribbler. It's always like, I've learned that I have to brush my teeth, then do my skincare regimen, because I'm always like, I feel like I'm always wiping off this part of my skin. I'm not like a mad dog where it's just like bubbles everywhere. It also might be because I use my sensitive toothpaste, like my hippie toothpaste, and the whole point is that it doesn't have sulfate in it, meaning it doesn't bubble the way normal toothpaste does. So I think that's where, but I am like an insane asylum dribbler. Let's get personal.
Yeah.
This was in a podcast that I shared with you, and I thought it'd be a good question. That Seth Godin podcast.
Oh yeah, it was a great one.
He asked, because there's that typical question, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And then he's like, actually, what I think is a better question is, what would you do if you knew you were gonna fail?
But when I read that, I was very confused. What would you do if you knew you were going to fail? It's just like, why is that?
Okay, so the original question, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? The inspirational one is, they're basically saying the reason you're not doing whatever you want to be doing, stand-up comedy, skydiving, whatever, is because there's a fear of failure.
Yeah.
So if you take away that fear of failure, what would you do? And that's, why people do art, or, quit their job, or, what have you. So he's saying a better question is, what would you do if you knew you were going to fail? Because what it's actually saying is, what would you do where the outcome doesn't matter?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So writing.
Writing, like just writing in general, writing
like personal essays.
Yeah. So you knew it was never going to get published. Nobody was ever going to read it.
I have like pages upon pages of documents of that.
And do you think what stops you from doing it consistently is worrying that somebody's going to read it, or somebody's not going to like it, or it being dismissed?
I've never been able to figure out what's hard about writing. I don't know why it's so hard to get into a habit and do it. I suppose I just need to keep reminding myself that it's important to me. That's why every other episode of this podcast, I'm like, I like writing. And it's just like, yeah, yes, you do. Fucking do it. But like, that's the one. I feel like everything else I want to do that I think would fit into that question would be like, what would you do if you could just learn a skill set just like that in an hour? And then I would be like, ooh, maybe I'd be a dancer or something, or a piano player. There's a lot I don't do because I don't know how to do it at all, like not even a little bit. So, but I think writing is something I would just do for myself anyway. It's something I've been doing my whole life anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, I went into stand-up thinking I was going to fail. Like, I never in a million years thought I would be where I am with it. So in some ways, like, clearly I lost that path as I was starting to have some success or some notoriety, or, some encouragement. But I originally got into stand-up when I was 16 years old, and it was like, I'll just try it. It's probably not going to work out. I'll do it for a little bit, and then I'll go do something else. And I think that purity, it almost safeguarded me for a couple of years. And then of course I had to come back to it. And now what I often remind myself now in my career is, because it took me so long to be happy, and I was just so miserable for a good chunk of time doing this, because comedy is hard, but the business is demoralizing and so much harder, is now that I'm in a place where I like what I do comedically and I like where I am professionally, I go, if this is it, if this is where I plateau right here, would I be happy? And I go, yeah, I could do this. If I continue to write the way I'm writing and put just as much effort and enjoy what I'm doing, and I have some connection with fans and I'm able to make a living, yeah, I'd be okay with this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I'd be very happy with this.
Yeah.
It's funny because like with stand-up, I only ever wanted to be, I wanted to do 7 minutes on Premium Blend. That's like, that was the height of my goals for stand-up.
Yeah.
And, I just always wanted, like, I was like, I have thoughts, I want to share them, you know, whether that's writing or stand-up, or what I didn't know at the time would be podcasting.
Yeah.
So it's all that stuff. I also want to act too. So like with acting, like I would do that and fail every time because it's fun.
Because when I did the web series with Carmen and my roommate Chris, like that was 100% like, it started out because of I think Hurricane Sandy. We were like, it was the first time we've ever been quarantined.
What about disasters get your careers going?
Oh my God, all disasters. But we quarantined for 2 days. Basically, we're in a part of Brooklyn where the train goes above ground, and they basically said anybody where the train goes above ground, they're not running the trains, and so we couldn't really leave our neighborhood. And then of course there was supposed to be this huge hurricane. It ended up not being that big of a deal. I think it was Hurricane Sandy. No, it was before Hurricane Sandy. This is Hurricane Irene. Hurricane Sandy was the really bad one. This was 2 years before. This was Hurricane Irene, and it wasn't as bad, but we weren't allowed to leave the house for the weekend. So we were like, oh, if we're gonna all be stuck, we should make something. And that's what started Apartment C3. But what was so fun about that is like Chris was like, he was already a photographer, but he was trying to learn more videography. So it was all a learning experience for him. And then me and Carmen had never really done sketch. We were just comics. And so it was like, and then we never really improv. Everything about it was everybody was learning on the spot, and we were just doing it for fun. And we didn't know if anybody was watching. And, this is like early YouTube and whatever. But what was really fun is like we would start doing shows, we'd be at shows. And so we'd be like, oh, we loved Apartment C3, or, I'm a big fan of Apartment C3. And we're like, people are watching. like we would get, so like we would come home with reviews. We'd be like, oh, I saw the door guy at the comic strip and he loved our last episode of Apartment C3. Oh my God, we're famous. The door guy at a comic strip knows who we are. It was such a pure, we already were not established, but we already had our life with stand-up. Here's just something to do for ourselves and get better. And what I really realized, because I never really enjoyed acting, I just hate certain scripts. Like all the acting I had done before, it was so uninventive and silly and like stupid. And we were just being silly, and it was our weirdness that was coming out. And I was like, oh, I think I like acting if I believe in what I'm acting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we did my super overactive imagination, me and Kat, like that was probably some of the most fun I had in my life after, before this podcast happened, obviously.
Yeah. Thank you.
But like, it just, we would come up with scenarios, we would sit and write them. We'd get our friends together to shoot them. We would set a date and just shoot them. And it was just so much fun. And then, and we got people watching, and people were like, why aren't you more popular? And we tried, but shit happens.
Both of our web series failed, and
web series are supposed to fail. What's supposed to happen is that we get plucked out of them into something else.
Yeah. Save us. And then you go to a podcast that takes way much less effort.
No, it doesn't.
The organization of two people is so much easier than the organization, because like we would have like guest stars, like we had like DC Benny and like Dean Edwards and Lance Weiss. Like we had a bunch of people that would be in ours, and like the organizing of schedules and sending us scripts, and like I was like,
nobody had a job in LA, so it was easy to get everybody in the room together.
That's true. And everybody's like, opportunity.
But also we didn't book it like that. We would be like, this is the date we're doing it, let's see who's available. So it just made it easier.
Yeah. I had like visions. I was like, DC Benny, he's in this. It has to be him. It has to be. You want to get into topic?
Yeah.
Okay. Our topic this week is self-abandonment. We've mentioned it. It's like come up in other episodes. And I think that's why I wanted to like do a deeper dive into self-abandonment. I feel like this is the year that I really discovered it, acknowledged it, understood it.
I mean, this is the first year I heard about it, but when I read about it, I was like, me,
100% me. I guess the best way to break down self-abandonment is when you ignore your own needs and desires to stay safe, to keep someone around, to be loved. You know what I mean? It's an abandoning of who you are, literally as a person, and what's important to you, to maintain some relationship, whether, like I said, like a parent or a guardian or what have you. And so nothing bad happens to you, or they aren't angry, or in a friendship or a romantic relationship, so that they don't literally abandon you, or let's say lash out, depending on that relationship. As soon as I started to learn about it this year, it really made me sad. I needed to know about it because it's clearly a problem of mine. I knew that I had codependency issues. I knew that I had people-pleasing issues, and I've gotten way better in both of those areas with friendship, and I would say like 50% better in relationships. But if I'm honest with signs and symptoms of self-abandonment, I'm pretty 90%. Like it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And that's hard to look at yourself and be like, you know, that person, like that friend or whatever, they get into a relationship and you never see them again. And then they break up and they come back in your life. I was always so resentful of that friend because I was like, come on, man. Like, you're just gonna completely abandon what we have because this dude or this girl is whatever. And then you're just gonna come back in like there isn't anything. And that kind of physical abandonment from a friend made me so angry. I don't really abandon people when I date, but I realized in some way I abandon myself when I date and I'm not fully myself and I become resentful of my partner because whether I feel like they're doing it or I'm doing it myself, that I don't show up the same way I show up with you, or I don't show up the same way I do with my other friends. And it's something that I'm doing. It's either the person I choose and I should have left earlier, or it's literally I'm doing it out of fear and it's no one else's responsibility but mine. And I think that was really hard to acknowledge.
Yeah. I think I talked about like how, being the person that in a relationship that gets into a relationship and disappears, and they're acting out of fear too. Like a lot of attachment issues when I first started dating Johnny, just like a lot of clinginess.
Yeah. Everything that I've read has been that it's clearly this was set as a child and then these relationships like turn it back on, because I don't feel this way with my friends. I don't feel this way with almost anybody else in my life. And then I start dating. Hey, sorry. Oh, come on. I'm trying to do a podcast.
I feel like you were the clingy one with Pasta. She was like,
no, she'll start crying.
Yeah, sure.
I can see her. She stands by the door and she looks at me like, bitch, you know, I want to leave.
It's not what she's thinking.
I know my cat. I wrote a book about cats. I think what has been really hard, she's biting me, to acknowledge is the fact that I might have done this earlier. I have done this earlier with friends, but I've gotten better. But there's something about relationships that trigger it. Okay, so it says individuals who experience abandonment in childhood may find themselves drawn to people who treat them poorly and eventually leave them. When this occurs, it reinforces fears of distrust and fears and distrust of others. So some of it is something happened in your childhood that set this physical abandonment and or emotional abandonment. And then you get into a relationship which brings out those fears. You start acting out those fears and you push those people away, and then they physically leave, and the cycle is like never ending. So that when you get into the next, so like let's say this happened in college, completely unconscious, then it keeps happening. So then you always kind of self-abandon. You never let anybody get close because you're like, it keeps happening, and you don't acknowledge that your actions are the thing that might actually be pushing people away. And or people can feel, I know this for a fact because I dated a guy like this, people can feel that you're not completely there. Like I dated a guy, good guy, sweetheart, had fun with him. I remember about 6 months in telling him, I feel like after 2 weeks, I stopped getting to know you. Everything I know about you, I learned in the first 2 weeks. And even though he returned my text messages, met all my friends, always wanted to be around, he was physically there, but he was emotionally over here. I could not get to know him. And eventually I was like, I'm not dating you. I don't feel like, I could tell when he was angry, but he didn't want to show his anger. And so I was like, be mad at me, like fucking say how you feel. But he couldn't trust himself to be himself around me because he was so scared I was going to leave. And then I did, because I was like, I'm not dating you. I don't know who I'm dating. I don't know who this guy is. Like, I don't actually know who you are.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I mean, so is there like pushing away by keeping someone at arm's length? And is there pushing away by being too needy? I mean, like those seem like
they're literally the different sides of the same coin. Like it's all under self-abandonment. So like, let me just list some of these things. So signs and symptoms: always wanting to please others, people pleaser, giving too much in a relationship, guilty, an inability to trust others. So that also could be, so you have that clinginess of people pleaser, but then also I don't trust you. Pushing others away to avoid rejection, feeling insecure in romantic partnerships and friendships, codependency, which you can't just say codependency. That's like a whole book of information. A need for continued reassurance that others love you, others love them and will stay with them. I mean, that's If we leave a text exchange and you don't say you love me, I'm like, does she just not love me anymore?
Yeah, I get it. I'm just like, what was this one kiss?
Yeah, piece of shit. You act like we use emojis in this family. Need to control others. We can talk more about that. Persisting with unhealthy relationships, the inability to maintain relationships, moving quickly from one relationship to another, sabotaging relationships, lack of emotional intimacy. So you can see some of those are completely contradictory. Some people clearly do one side of it, some people do the other. Some
I recognize in friends.
yes.
Some I recognize in myself. Maybe
Yeah.
it's like we're both like that and then just butting heads.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the need to control others that's something my father does, and it's always made me push people away. Like if you try to control me, I mean, I throw you. I absolutely, like, I've always had a problem with authority. You know, when like we meet somebody and you'll be like, oh, he seems really nice. And I'm like, I hate him. And you're like, dude, we had the same interaction with him. Why is your hate so visceral? And it's me picking up on that kind of controlling. Either they're trying to control the conversation. There's something about what they're doing that's controlling. And I just get, ugh. But
Yeah.
I noticed it in myself. And it's taken so much therapy to try to not control my emotions, which is actually the catchphrase that my dad probably did the most damage with as a kid: control your emotions. And then it took me years to even know that I had emotions. But controlling others for love, like you're not trying to control others because you like want them to do stuff for you. You're literally trying to control others so that they don't abandon you. And that's what my dad does. And I was so bad at it. And now that's like, I've gotten, I would say like 70% better, but it's still something I struggle with. But the need to control others often comes from a place of trying to avoid all this pain. And that's also what people pleasing is, by the way. People pleasing is manipulative. And that was a hard pill to swallow, that
Yeah.
my people pleasing was a form of control so that I wasn't abandoned.
Yeah.
And that people pleasing is manipulative.
Let your cat go.
I can't. She'll cry, and I'm trying to be professional.
So my flatmate, when she was like, I tested positive and you should probably get tested too. Like I made her sound like that. And so you could tell how angry I was.
Yeah.
About just a simple like few words. But like, you should probably get tested too pissed me off to a level I can't explain to anyone.
Yeah.
It's like, I fucking obviously will. You don't need to tell me. Stop micromanaging my life, Dad. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like she triggered me because like it was just such a. My dad always has these little. It's like something helpful and then something bossy, and it's just like, why the bossy part? I know what I'm doing. I can handle myself. Like and so anything like that coming from anyone, like you're dead to me forever.
You'll relate to this. So I went home for the holidays. And I make tea every morning. Anyway, I go to make tea and the tea's on. And my dad goes, is there water in that? I go, yeah, Dad, I know how to make tea. And he goes, so, and I was like really sarcastic. And he was like, oh, sorry. And like, he like whimpered off. But I was just like, because he can't handle, like my dad he just retired. He's been a boss. You know, he had 5 kids so he could be a boss, and he owned a business so he could be a boss. And now he has nobody to boss around. And I'm like, I don't work for you and I'm 35. Like you can't, how does tea work? You pick it up, you feel how heavy it is, you put water in it, you don't put water in it. How do you think I'm boiling something with nothing in it? Like, are you insane? But it's like that level of like, I've lived my entire life without you. I've never set a house on fire. What do you think is happening? Yeah. But he micromanages. And you might think I'm blowing it out of proportion, but clearly people, we know that it isn't just the tea. It's everything where they're just like, when you go outside, you got to wear a coat.
Yeah.
What?
You know what's funny about that coat thing is that Johnny's flatmate was like going for a walk. It was freezing out and he had like a light coat on and I was this close to going, is that the coat you're going to wear? And I had to unravel that. I was like, let's unpack why the fuck I felt the need to mother him there. And then, but it was because he was being a little like standoffish, a little aloof. Something was going on with him. And my way of figuring out how to connect with him was to mention the jacket.
Yeah.
Like a parent would do when their child is being like all like fuck off hormonal, like I don't want to talk to you. Then they're going to start nitpicking and nagging. Not because they're going to go, I'll nag them. That's what will make them
Yeah.
like come, but it's just like some way to connect.
It is. And I think that's really important. So like I felt bad that I hurt my dad's feelings and I did my best to fix it. But like, I think I viscerally push people away that try to control me. But when I try to do it to other people, having that awareness is what has stopped me and I've gotten better at it. Whereas like I cook with my roommate, John, 3 days a week. It's like a new thing that we started. And so he's actually a better cook than I am. But I read the directions 9 times because I'm like dyslexic and I have to like really absorb it. So it'll be like thinly slice something. And I look over at John and it's like huge chunks like this. And I have to go, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. How we both read the same thing. Why am I assuming that I know something better? It doesn't matter.
I have had to say it doesn't matter so many times to myself. This whole year has been, it doesn't matter. Leave it.
It is probably one of the most important internal catchphrases. And to the point where I've had to be like, do you want to keep this person in your life? Or do you want very thin potatoes?
Yes.
Like, what do you want?
That's exactly it.
And being
that would be a soundbite I would use forever if I could.
Yeah. Do you want to die alone? Or do you want the best potatoes you've ever had?
Do you want to keep this person in your life, or do you want very thin potatoes? Is going to be like our next like meme on the Instagram. So just note it.
We got it. I mean, it's almost another version of, do you want to be right or do you want to be with this person?
Of course, yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it's not, do you want to be right? It's, do you want to care? Because like telling somebody it's cold outside, or telling somebody, this is how did you check to see if there's water in a kettle? Like, it comes from a caring place, but it's like, it's hard to tell somebody that loves you that they're caring for you wrong. Think about when you first get into a relationship. What is like, you're trying to like pick up on things. Oh, they love the color maroon. I'm going to buy them something maroon, or they seem to love chocolate. Like, but then there's also like, I remember telling my ex, like, don't do that. Like, I know you think you're being protective, but you're actually upsetting me. And I understand it's coming from a loving place, but we're going to go down a bad road if you continue to do that. And he was really good in the beginning of being like, I hear you. And he would just stop. And I was like, fucking yeah. Like, I was getting better at voicing it because I was scared to voice it because of self-abandonment. But then also the fact that he listened was such a like a green flag in relationships that he was able to do that. But I had to do all that work to even say something, because I think that's the first form of self-abandoning is, this makes me uncomfortable or this upsets me. And then I would normally go into my head and be like, I can fix this. I can make myself not feel bad, or it isn't a big deal. Or if I tell them, they're going to go away. And I've through the practice probably of a lot of friends, been able to go, hey, and it's my friend Nitika was the first person that really sat me down and did. She's like, hey, I know you didn't mean this. I know you love me. I know this wasn't intentional, but X, Y, and Z. And it still hurts. That's the funny part about it, is even with all those caveats and even with all that love, it still doesn't feel good to have hurt somebody and to have a habit that isn't good. But that way of explaining it and making it a softer criticism has made me be able to not only change myself, but also show up for other people. And I love that yawn that's happening.
Well, I could have hit it, but that would be self-abandoning.
But I'm still going through this. Like, I still, like, even reading that list, it was a little bit of a punch in the face where I was like, oh, fucking.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I self-abandon all the time. Every minute of my life. Like, I was in an Uber and guy had the whole window down and it was freezing. So in a passive aggressive way, but I was just trying to be like polite. So I didn't want to be like, roll your window up. I didn't want to tell him what to do. But it's like, can you turn the heating up? I'm cold. Thinking he would be like, oh, that means maybe the window's up or down too much. But he just turned the heater on for a bit. Window remained down, and then he turned it off, and then I was freezing again, and I didn't want to say anything because I was like, what if he kicks my ass? Like, I'm just that bitch in the back being like, will you turn the heating up and the window up?
Well, that goes back to like my people pleasing issue. Like, same exact example in an Uber. My contacts dry out. Like when you're on the highway and the window's down, And I didn't want him to not, we haven't talked, by the way. We have said nothing to each, I've been like, hey, thank you so much. Like I always am like very kind, but like, I'm not, especially if it's an early morning flight or something, I'm not trying to have a conversation. And my contacts are starting to dry out, which, I'm thinking, do I have my drops? Da, 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 da. And all I would have to say is, hey, but I didn't want him to not like me, or I
Oh.
didn't want to be high maintenance. So what I did was put my head down and try to be below the window. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, but that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's at some point, if you never self-abandon, would you be the most naggy person in the world? Like, can you slice those potatoes very thin? Can you roll the window up? Can you, like, if every need of yours was met because you decided not to self-abandon, nobody would like you.
Yes, I agree. And there's people that have to understand that your needs and desires you're not on a pedestal. You're not, the fucking queen of the land. But at the same time,
Pretty sure I'm queen of the land.
yeah, pretty sure. I don't think you know who I am. No, but I do think there's compromises in all relationships. There's a difference between like an annoyance that has no basis in something and self-abandonment. So a need is literally like my contacts are going to fall out of my goddamn eyes, and it's actually a problem, and that should be said. But or like being so cold that you can't focus should be said. And these are fixable moments. Put the window up. That's a fixable moment. But the potatoes being thin enough, what really is the end game with that? Like if your 100% desire is for this to be the best meal that you've ever had, and it's life-changing, it's a cook-off, then yes, be nitpicky about the potatoes, but you're just making food for you and your roommate. What do you get out of that other than micromanaging somebody and making them feel that they're doing something wrong or they don't have value? So I do think there's going to have to be some inner work of how important is this? How necessary is this need? My therapist, and I think I told you this on a personal call, when I was having issues with my ex, my therapist would say, is this enough? That's what she would say. Is this enough? And it took until we broke up for me to really acknowledge what she was trying to say. But you could even use that in a baby moment where is how this person is showing up right now, is it enough? If it is, then there's nothing that really needs to be said. They're doing their best. If it's not, is it movable? Like, you know what I mean? If you need somebody, like there's controlling things where you're like, I would love them more if they were 6'4", and you're like, yeah, man, there's not much you can do about that. And you have to acknowledge why you need somebody to be that tall to love them. If they made this much money, like if it's this kind of thing where it's like your need is something that's outside of who they are as a person and incapable, then that's within you. But if it's something that's making you uncomfortable, if it's something that is so important to you that it's on your, we always call them man demands, but like it's non-negotiable, then yes, you need to speak up. But of course, there's tons of things where you need to compromise. But what you're going to have to compromise is your own internal work. Can I live without this? Is this important? If I don't get this, is it going to make me internally suffer or feel resentful or be angry all day? But that's where real relationship work is that back and forth. And I think what I struggled with my ex is I had just started to learn how to express my needs. I'm not even exaggerating. It's been the last 2 relationships. I felt good about it. It's still very scary to express them, even with friends. And I was doing that, but he wouldn't express his. And I spent so much time being like, I know I'm missing the mark, but I can't be inside your head. And he wouldn't express it. And then fast forward, the first time we broke up, which was a year ago, he goes, I was so resentful that you could express your needs and I couldn't figure out how to express mine. And it's like, hey man, I don't know what to tell you. I did everything I could to make this a safe space for you to express yourself, but at some point that's on you. And I think he really suffered from self-abandonment. So I'm in this place where I'm trying to do better about it. And he was, if I'm at step 5, he was at step 0. And I was trying to help, but at some point, me actually being healthy was attacking him. And it's like, I wasn't prepared for that. Like, I didn't even have an answer for that. I'm like, I tried. Like, really, like, that was the end of our relationship. When we did break up, I was like, I did my best and I don't actually have any answers. Good luck. I looked up, how do you get healthier? Like, how do you start to stop self-abandoning? and I hated every answer. It was like, write a letter to your abandoned parts. Let yourself feel, like letting yourself feel is valid, but like I was reading all of them. And so I kind of, not that I think, we know anything, but I think what has really helped me get better. And like I said, I am still struggling with it. Feeling your feelings has been the hardest thing, but the most important thing. And I think I spend most of my day trying to avoid it, but I do take time both in therapy to feel my feelings. I've texted you and been like, I feel lonely. Like just even telling somebody else how I feel makes me acknowledge that is how I am feeling. And then clearly, if you have time, we talk about it. But sometimes you're like, hey, I don't have time, but maybe we can talk tomorrow. And I go, that's great. And then I talk about it with somebody else, but acknowledging what my actual feeling is. And then if I'm struggling to sit with it alone, sitting with it with somebody else, a therapist, a friend, what have you. But then the other thing is watching your patterns. Like I had to watch myself look over at John, see him cut the fattest potatoes I've ever seen, and go, I'm not going to do that.
Cooking's a hard one too. That's a hard one to let go of. So well done you.
Yeah. I'm not going to do that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know it's the same. It's just like, it's going to be a meal. It's going to be lovely. You'll be full by the end of it. And you won't have fought. And seeing the patterns thing is a big one. I think that like in a recent fight I got into with a friend that I had called you and was like, can you help me untangle this because I'm too in it. I could see what she was doing. I knew I was acting under a trigger too. Like I knew I'd been triggered. Yeah. I knew I knew my emotional response wasn't hot. It was too extreme for what it was. But just being able to recognize like, oh, she said and did this, which reminded me of this, or this time I was treated this way. And that's why I'm reacting the way I am. Not that she's right and I'm wrong, but like just recognizing that, like.
And I remember I got in a fight with my older sister. This was like years ago. And I had to pull back and I had to go, is there something I've done recently for you to be this angry? And she goes, what does that mean? I go, the thing you're mad at me right now is a 2, but how you're reacting is a 10. And so what that's telling me is that this isn't about the 2 issue. It's about something in the past. So are you upset with me about something else? And I think we can resolve both of these at the same time. And that was very scary because my older sister can be a little aggressive sometimes. She's a lovely person.
I'm terrified of her. I never even met her.
She's my older sister. We have our issues. I think she kind of was like, no. And then I think she kind of came back and she goes, actually, and it helped. And like, even just me being less scared of my sister or being less scared of certain people in my life and being like, because the best like Instagram quote that I've ever read is, if speaking up and being yourself is what makes people run away, then they were never there to begin with.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, it's still triggering when they leave. But at the end of the day, if me telling you how I feel and me saying, hey, you did this thing that hurt my feelings is the thing that throws you away, or saying what my needs are, then they never actually knew you. You were just pretending to be somebody else or trying to be a version of yourself to have their love. And that doesn't feel good. And so it's a lot of being like, it took a lot of work of me liking who I was first, because I think it was so much easier to self-abandon before because I didn't even like myself. But now I like myself and I'm still self-abandoning. So nobody gets to know the awesome version of me.
Except for all of our listeners who can write into us at twonondoctors@gmail.com.
Exactly. But I would actually like to know what are some things that you do that is self-abandoning, or if this podcast made you understand that some of your habits are self-abandoning. But I think it's a bigger problem than people realize. And I think just having the label self-abandoning and getting to know it made me understand all the different ways that I've been doing it, both in the past and currently.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I could tell like story after story after story. Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye.